Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Author's Purpose, where we ask authors what's the purpose of their stories. And today we have the amazing, groundbreaking writer, Taylor. So, can you introduce yourself for us?
All right. Well, like you said, my name's Taylor. My Wattpad username is moonraess, spelled kind of awkwardly. I've been on Wattpad for almost 4 years, which is crazy because I feel like I still joined just yesterday. And I write contemporary new adult and recently young adult that are usually pretty mental health focused in some way. And that's kind of the space I live in on Wattpad.
Mhm. So, could you tell me why you decided to come onto the podcast today?
Yeah, so I've actually never been on a podcast before. So I figured this would be a really cool opportunity. It was an easy yes for me, and I like talking writing with people. So, like I said,
Mhm.
easy yes.
Easy yes. Um,
Hmm.
and as my audience has heard time and time again, I created this podcast because I just love writing. I have a writing club at my college. Like I just write and write and write. I recently launched a website and I recently posted the first chapter of my book. So it's like I write. Writing is a part of me and I kind of want to share the stories of other writers, not just me. So that's kind of another reason why I created this podcast.
No, that's
Um
awesome, and I totally agree.
mhm,
Like it's just when you write, it's like part of you.
mhm. Thank you so much. So, could you tell me like what was the primary inspirations or if there were multiple, like what is that one moment that you said, I got to sit down and write this book?"
So for relative fiction, it's not the first novel I've written,
Mhm.
but um, and it's not even the first novel I've written that focuses specifically on drug addiction and substance abuse, which you've read it. It's the main topic of it. The first book I wrote when I first joined Wattpad, Crash Into Me, which actually was my first Wattpad letter from 2018. It was
Mhm.
basically just me writing a fictionalized version of my lived experiences. It was 2018. I was going through some stuff, experiencing some things that weren't great.
Mhm.
Um, and that was all I was doing. It was sort of like a way for me to cope and get back into writing too. Prior to writing that, I hadn't written anything fictional in years at that point. So then realizing, like finishing that, and then realizing that the subject matter that I was writing about wasn't something that was common in contemporary fiction
Mhm.
or something that people were even all that educated on. I was like, all right, let me take this up a notch, because it's something that a subject matter that I'm very passionate about. And so when
Mhm.
it came to relative fiction, I wanted to tackle a story from the perspective of the addict versus someone observing addiction from the outside, which is what Crash Into Me was. And I also wanted to try writing a full story that was in male first person perspective. So the whole story is narrated by the main character, Kai. And it was sort of a way for me to address some of I find like the toxic masculinity that exists when it comes to mental health and young men getting help, and especially in like the substance abuse and addiction space.
Mhm.
And then it was just sort of then my way of trying to educate people too, like it was with Crash Into Me, but from a very different perspective. And that's kind of it just wrote itself, to be honest. Once I realized like what I wanted to do with it, it came so naturally for me just to write about. Like I said, I feel like something that I'm passionate about that you don't see a lot of accurate representation in contemporary fiction. So it hit a lot of points for me as a
Mhm.
writer, and stuff that I wanted to accomplish as a writer. And it ended up being a turning point for me just in my writing journey in general, because after writing that in full male first person perspective, I
Mhm.
basically everything I've written since then has been in male first person perspective, including like the young adult novel that I just finished like 2 months ago.
Mhm.
I realized like, wow, I like writing this perspective. I think it's a strength of mine. And so just everything about it, and that's kind
Yeah.
of where I'm at.
So this is a question, just a random question that just came to my head, but like, how is it different writing in the male perspective than it is the female perspective for you?
For me, let's see. I feel like the wit and the humor is a bit different.
Mhm.
I also do feel like you have a little bit more liberty to be a little bit more poetic and pretty
Mhm,
in your female perspective.
mhm,
And males just observe, they observe things differently. And that's not to say like, you know, I don't write male perspective with the idea of like, hey, I'm going to objectify women or I'm going to, write this a certain way. Like from that perspective, it's, more so just the way that they observe things. I feel like my prose flows a little bit differently from
mhm,
female perspective, but my male voice is stronger, which is bizarre for me to actually even say that out loud. I think the wit and the humor is different, but I also just think part of that is specifically the way that I build my male protagonists.
mhm,
So I think that might have something to do with it. I do, that's another reason why I think I've sort of clung to writing in male perspective right now is
mhm,
because like you still have the ability to make them emotive and sort of I guess break stereotypes. I consult with my husband a lot
mhm,
about a lot of stuff. I'm like, yo, is like this what you think? Like how are you, how are you observing this? So that helps, but definitely just because it's a guy narrating it doesn't mean they have to, like I said, objectify women or
mhm,
not be sensitive and emotional because
mhm,
men are sensitive and emotional, and that's part of the whole trying to break the cycle of toxic masculinity in this space, in the mental health space, is that if you're a guy, you're allowed to be sensitive and emotional, and so I think that's a priority of mine when I do write in male perspective, and I think it definitely comes through in Kai's voice
mhm,
more or the most out of any of my male narrators.
mhm. What I can say, I haven't read any of your other books, but I'm going to more likely than not. But what I can say is this book definitely does have a strong, like, that's not just words like that, like these characters actually feel like people, and the male perspective, Kai's perspective, does ring some true bells with my perspective. Often when I'm
Mm-hmm.
reading a male perspective, it's like that's not me, that's just a
Mm-hmm.
stereotype of me, that is just something you've observed on the outside and replicate it. It isn't the whole truth. It's just one piece of the truth. But I didn't see
Mm-hmm.
that with this work. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why I kind of clung to it. Because I'm a very diverse reader. I read everything. But for some
Good.
reason, this called to me in that male perspective in a way that I thought that if this was told in any other perspective that wasn't Kai's, whether that be males or not, it wouldn't have been a complete story. So I really love how you wrote this character because I feel like this is his story. This is him.
Oh, thanks. That makes me feel really good. I'm very attached to Kai. Like I said, he kind of just wrote himself. There was a
Mhm.
point in time when I was writing it, he just like took the wheel, and I was like, all right, you do your thing. Like I'll be your words, but like this is your story, and
Mhm,
I'm definitely very connected to him. So that I appreciate that. Thank you.
mhm. So what does your writing process look like in general, and did it like kind of
Mhm.
change with this book? Did you do something special with this book?
Not really actually. When I think back on it, it pretty much just developed in any way that most of my stories develop. When I get an idea that I feel like I can run with, and there are plenty I get that I can't run with, but when I feel like I can do something with this, I always try and have how the story's going to start, and then as well as like the climax or like the biggest plot point of the story, and then I always want to know my ending. And then everything else that's in the middle kind of just comes as I start writing it. And it's pretty much been the case for everything I've completed. Like I said, there's definitely things I have not completed.
Mhm,
I've abandoned a lot of stories, but they all sort of start out the same.
mhm,
And then I start writing it, and then as I'm going on, I'll put down a couple of either scenes or important things I want to happen, timeline, and then as I get further on, I'll start to go chapter by chapter and plot out things. And that I think sort of just helps me move the story along so you don't get stuck in the middle. Cause that's
mhm,
definitely, I feel like, at least for me, that's the hardest part of the story is the middle when it's sort of just like stagnant stuff and you try not to write fillers and all that
mhm.
kind of stuff. But before I even start writing anything, actually, I always have playlists. That's like really
Me
important to
too.
me.
Oh, I
Just for
love the
aesthetic,
music
like
in this book, like literally.
oh, you. This is one of my better playlists, I will say. Like, I vibe with it, and I play it all the time still, even though obviously I haven't touched that story in probably over a year. That's definitely important for me. I want to get the vibe before I
Mhm.
really start it. Visually, listening to. So that's good. No,
Mm.
we vibe with that.
Yeah, I've created a playlist for my books. I don't show people the
So
playlist.
important.
What did you say?
So that's so important, even just for yourself. Like,
Yes, yes, because it's like that one. The music helped me get through the scenes very, very, very much quicker. Like, but it
yes,
also helps me put the emotions on the page better because I'm actively feeling them. So I'm like,
yes, definitely. Like my sometimes my Spotify top, like my top 10 on Spotify sort of like exposes me because I'm like,
"Hmm,
okay, I was definitely listening to that song on repeat for 2 hours writing the scene.
yeah, me too. Sometimes I get very scared because some of them are just weird songs that just remind me of the characters. So I'm like, if I share this
Right?
with people,
Or
if I share this
right,
with
no,
people, they're gonna
exactly.
think
Like,
I'm
don't
weird.
judge me.
Um, the next question is, what is your writing strength and your writing weakness? But before you answer, I kind of do want to say mine. Recently I figured out that because I've been writing and I've been writing for years, and I've like
Mhm.
I'm a fledgling writer. Like I'm no magician. I think you guys are magicians, the ones that pump out books and they're so amazing and they win stuff. Like I don't know. That's pretty amazing to me. But for me, my strength I would say is definitely the plot and characterization. When
Mhm.
people read my work, they definitely see the characters and they feel the characters and they get attached very quickly. So
Oh
sometimes they're
yeah.
wringing my neck like, "Where's the new chapter?" But I feel like that's a good thing.
Oh
um,
yeah, definitely.
my weakness though is I over dramatize. Like, give me a scene and I'll make it as dramatic as possible. And I just found that my writing just naturally flows that way. So instead
Mhm.
of like ramping up the pose, which at first I thought that was what good writing was when I just started off
Mhm.
writing, which it is not. um, I often found myself having to take a step back and realize, like, is this really an emotional moment, or am I just overusing prose that I like? So,
Right, I gotcha.
mhm. So what is yours?
Um, I actually think I'm going to play off of your characterization thing because I do feel like maybe even not necessarily the characterization itself, but I feel like recently I've really learned that one of my strengths is character building and character development. Like, so in every story of mine, at this point, it's become sort of a conscious effort to me because I like this. But in every story of mine, you can essentially watch the main characters grow and develop, or in some cases even regress. Like, that's the thing about
Mhm,
character development is that it doesn't have to be positive. And I learned that with my young adult fiction that I just recently completed. It's actually a lot of character regression for him before the end of the story. So I
mhm,
think that's something that I've learned is a strength of mine. Just the way that the characters behave at the beginning versus the end is very different. And I think that that's important in a character driven story. So, like in contemporary, it can be very character driven. It's not,
mhm,
fantasy or adventure where they have this journey that they have to take, and that's what drives the plot. But when you have character driven stories that where like the characters drive the plot instead of the plot drive the characters,
mhm,
I feel like that's important. And so I've learned that I think it's something I'm pretty good at, and so I do, especially now, make a conscious effort to say to myself when I'm writing,
mhm,
does this help my character development? Has my character's behavior changed? Again, positive or negative. I'm all about that realism,
mhm,
So
mhm,
sometimes things happen to people and it has a negative effect on them, and that's
mhm.
fine. That's still character change and character development.
Yeah.
And I think it just really helps create like very complex three-dimensional characters, and that's important to me
Mhm.
personally.
I
I think for
100% agree. Because when Kai ran and burnt them paintings, I felt it.
oh,
I felt it.
that was one of my favorite scenes to write.
Felt that.
Oh, that's good. I think on top of that though too, like you saying that kind of makes me think of that scene specifically too. I feel like um another like strength I have that I feel like it's only a strength because I consciously try and do it now. You know, practice makes perfect kind of thing is
Mhm.
sensory imagery. So like
Oh.
that scene,
Mhm.
you know there's fire. You know what the fire smells like. You know like it's hot. Like you know
Mhm.
that kind of sensory imagery. When I want you as a reader to feel like you're literally dropped into a scene. So when you're there and you're like, okay, what does it smell like? What is you know like what's the temperature? What are the sounds you hear? All that stuff. I want to make sure you as a reader you know that. So I
Mhm.
think that's probably a secondary strength of mine, not as
Mhm.
strong as my character development, but weaknesses. Um, I think I kind of mentioned this before. I think I always try and do too much.
Mhm.
What I mean by that is I have all these plot ideas and I always want to run everything into the ground, like full send. This is a story I have, and I'm going to do it. And I feel like I
Mhm.
end up burning myself out. And I've experienced burnout a couple of times over the past couple of years, just trying to essentially do too much. And then I end up like abandoning story ideas. And that's just, for me, like, it's just not a good look. You know, like me personally, I'm like, yeah, that sucks.
Mhm.
Don't do that. But it's something I'm trying to work on. Not really getting much better at it. But I'm trying.
Mhm. That idea sometimes just takes me hostage. It's like, write me now.
Exactly it. Literally, that's exactly what happens.
Mhm. For me, I feel like the two main like kind of issues that I had with your book is the fact that like at some moments I was just like, it doesn't feel right. Like his struggle, it while I 100% agree that this is Kai's story, it just feels like I don't know. I think it's something about the money. Like I don't feel as though Kai is struggling financially, and I don't feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's a necessary thing to be an addict. Addicts comes in all shapes and forms, but it's just
Oh
kind of
yeah.
like when I see like I think it was just because right before your book I read another story about an addict that was just flat out broke, and they tried to make the
Mm-hmm.
best of their situation. So I already had that impression in my mind of how much struggle it is not only to be an addict, but not to be able to afford any sorts of treatment. But it's like when
Mm-hmm.
Kai needs that treatment, his parents hand it to him. And like
Mm-hmm.
it I feel like it was just like wrong place, wrong time. Like if I didn't read that book before that, it wouldn't have resonated. Like I wouldn't even have saw that as an issue because in that book
Mm-hmm.
they tried so hard to get help. It's just they couldn't afford it. And
Mm-hmm.
for like Kai to take advantage of that, it only heightened his flaws in my mind. But I don't think that's necessarily a all bad thing. And that wasn't really like the prime problem I had with the novel. But the
Oh,
prime it
oh,
was
go ahead, go ahead.
it was
I was
just
gonna say
something
you
in the
hit the nail
background
on
that I
that,
kind of
but yes,
just was
go
like
ahead.
squinting at. It wasn't like necessarily bad or good, I would say. But the thing that really kind of bugged me was like I felt though as if Sage was she was a symbol and she was demified. Like she wasn't a human in my mind. And I didn't like that. I I felt like towards the end it definitely got better where I was starting to see her as a person, especially when she had that like breakdown. I was definitely getting
Mm-hmm.
more like this is an actual human being. But throughout the course of the
Mm-hmm.
novel, before that scene, I was just like she's terrible, she's terrible. And then when I really reflected on it, it's just like she's another person with another story. And even though that doesn't justify what she did to Kai, she still was it takes two to tango. Like he did things to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really and I kind of felt bad that I demified her in her in my head after it.
Oh,
It
everybody does. Don't feel bad about it.
okay. And I was just like, oh, author,
This
no,
is definitely
stop.
not meant to be good.
Yeah, I know.
No, I think you really did. Like, especially the first thing you said though, you got that pretty spot on because he doesn't want help in the
Mhm.
beginning. Like he's sort of accepted the fact that this is how his life is, and he's just like, all right, well, screw it, whatever. And part of it is Sage, where she sort of kept him in that spot. And now, granted,
Mhm.
again, he's stayed consciously stayed there with her. But the thing about people in those kind of relationships is, you know, like you just feel like you can't leave, you
Mhm.
know. And but you definitely hit that spot on. He like his parents wanted him to get help, and he was like, I'm okay, because I feel like, and that's just honestly, that's just my personal experience with addicts is that I have
Mhm,
been around people who I would consider to be privileged,
mhm,
that go through various stages of help and recovery. I mean, I've been to AA meetings. I've met people in like
mhm,
all kinds of walks of life, and that really like resonated with me. I mean, this was years ago at this point, but it
mhm,
always stuck with me that you've said it before too. Like addiction, it can hit anyone, literally anyone. So I feel like I purposely made him maybe a little bit more, let's say, middle class, like for lack of a better word,
mhm,
because it's it's not the only, addicts aren't one specific kind of person.
mhm,
It can be that broke guy who's struggling to get help, and that's another issue I don't even get into. But it definitely can be that person, but it can be other people too.
mhm,
Um, and yeah, Kai definitely doesn't fully understand in the beginning, like how, I don't want to say how lucky he is because he's still struggling, but
mhm,
he definitely doesn't want the help. He thinks that this is just the way his life is.
mhm. So, do you try to be an original person? Like, do all the ideas come for you, or do you try to give readers what they ask for?
Um, I'm definitely more original, but I don't really know that that's even on purpose necessarily. Like, it's
Mhm,
more so just the kinds of stories that I want to tell and that I'm passionate about telling just happen to be things that perhaps aren't typically what you found on Wattpad or aren't like the popular thing right now.
mhm,
But that's always how I've operated as a writer. Like I always, and this is like advice I always give to people who are either starting out or ask for help. Like always write what you want to write, always.
mhm,
Um, and so it just so happens to be that most of the stuff I write isn't necessarily popular, but it's not all that purposeful.
mhm. And I definitely feel like this book was different from other books that I've read in
Hmm.
Wattpad. And I feel like that's kind of the common thread of the people that I have on this podcast is that they're
Right.
all something they took a work that I'm used to and twisted it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and that kind of really helped me want to start this podcast and want to talk to them because it's like that twist means the world for your novel. Like it's not it I don't know, it's so different and refreshing that I just can't help but talk about it.
Oh, that's really nice. I like that perspective a lot.
Mhm. So can you tell me like what was your process on this book winning the Waddies and if and if that was kind of like, oh, I expected that or it was like, oh, I just filled that out randomly. I didn't even know that was a thing.
So I definitely didn't expect it to win.
Mhm.
Definitely not. Even being, I mean, I mentioned before, like I won my first Wadi in 2018.
Mhm.
And I've entered something. Actually, I didn't enter anything last year, but I usually enter something every year if I have something that applies. Just
Mhm.
for the hell of it. Like, what's that cliche? You miss 100% of the shots you never take, or whatever, Wayne Gretzky. But I definitely didn't expect to win. Like, even when I got like the shortlist notification, like the notification that I'd made the shortlist. Even after seeing that and like
Mhm.
looking at other stories, like I was like, "There's no way like mine's gonna win against all these." I entered it in the new adult category, I think, and I was
Mhm.
like, "No way! There's just no way." And then I remember I'm like low key a Reddit lurker, and I remember like seeing on Reddit about some like writer or like reader run website that when the shortlist came out, they came out with their like Waddy winner predictions, and I was on it,
Mhm.
which I was like kind of shocked about. But then, what was the commentary? It was like they said something about how they weren't sure if Wattpad was ready to award like the complexity of the heroin addiction in the story.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm not sure either. So because I mean, that's true in the sense that like I get that some of what I write about just isn't mainstream, isn't marketable, isn't winnable, whatever.
Mhm.
And I've totally accepted that, and I'm happy to write what I write. But
Mhm.
so it definitely, I remember running down the stairs to my husband's office downstairs and like I almost like slipped down the stairs when I found out I won too. And I was just like, look at this.
I would
No,
have
I
loved that
definitely
role.
remember like I had socks on and like I almost slipped down the stairs.
Mhm. I wish I could have saw it.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh my god.
Mhm. So what's something that was in the first draft but didn't make it to the final, and why did you change that?
Hmm. I don't know if it was really necessarily like me cutting things from the first to the second draft, but I actually feel like I expanded the second draft because
Mhm.
it is a very short novel. Novels are typically like 50K words or
Yeah.
higher, and this is 55K, so it's like just there.
Mhm.
The one major change that I feel like I did was I aged all the characters down. So in the
Mhm.
original draft, they were like their mid to late 20s, like 25, 26.
Mhm.
And I aged them down to be more college age, 2021. I feel like for me, it just made more sense and it fit the characters better, like where they were in life, the things they were doing. And so to me, I'm like, this just makes sense.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I think there were just some scene expansions. And I developed, Kai and AJ's relationship a little bit more. I think there was more like expanded scenes with them together.
Mhm.
Um, but otherwise, there really wasn't anything major. I changed the title of it too.
Mhm.
It used to be titled Closer. And then last
Oh,
year I changed
I've
the
read this
title.
before. I didn't realize that. I was
I
like,
changed the title. And then there were, like I said, like little edits and
mhm.
things like that. And then I changed it to Relative Fiction. Closer just like it doesn't have a kick. You're like, okay,
Mhm.
closer to what? Closer what? So there wasn't like the hook to the title.
Mhm.
Um, and though not other than that, nothing major. I'm not an editor. I hate editing. So, like, I
I
want to
love
finish something
editing.
and then like never. Oh my god, I literally want to finish something and then never touch it again.
I'm literally the
Like, don't. I
opposite.
was like, I don't want to
I'm
do this.
like, it's finished. Now I can actually do things to it. When I'm drafting it, I'm
Oh
just
my
like,
god.
let it be over, Lord.
I wish I could operate like that because I'm an edit as I go person. So like
Mhm.
I've gotten hung up on paragraphs for hours. Like I will never forget this when I was writing my young adult novel Blind Ambition, and there's a scene like the in a locker room. It's like chapter 11, 12, whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting here for hours, this paragraph. I'm like, what color are the lockers? What does this locker room look like? What am I doing? Where is this table? Where is this door? How far are they taking him? What color is the floor?
Mhm.
Like hours with this
Hours.
one paragraph. So I wish I could just go and then go back and edit it. I feel like I definitely edit as I go. And
Mhm.
so you get like you feel like I give a more complete or finished product at the end, but it definitely like, it hinders my storytelling a little bit because I get very hung up on nuances and things like that. And I
Mhm.
wish I could just write and go.
What is that like one message that you were trying to get across with relative fiction?
The message, huh? I guess mostly just that people who struggle with the things that Kai struggled with, the addiction, the substance abuse, they are still people and they are still deserving of help.
Mhm.
And that being an addict doesn't automatically make you a bad person.
Mhm.
I mean, I have addicts in my life, people who are well recovered, clean and sober, whatever you want to call it, best people I
Mhm.
know. You know what I mean? So I feel like I have that perspective of I know people that have gone through this and that are really good people, but they still feel like, they can't go out and go, it's uncomfortable for them to go to a bar and tell people that they're not drinking. Like, you know what I mean? Because there
Mhm.
is those stigmas attached to it. So I I wanted Kai to be sweet, like I wanted him to be somebody that you really wanted to care about, even though he made bad decisions and he struggled. I
Mhm.
still wanted you to be like, no, I like him. I want him to get better. I feel like he deserves it. Whatever your perspective is on it, and
Mhm.
that was a big thing for me. Like, hey, he's good peeps. Like
Mhm.
despite everything, he's a good guy and he's got a good heart, and I feel like that definitely reflects my lived experiences and just people I've met. And like I said, going to those AA meetings with my loved ones. Like it's never been me, but I've observed it and
Mhm,
gone through those processes with several people in my life. And the
mhm,
people I've met, the people that they know, I've met some really great people, and I feel bad for them that they feel like this stigma like hinders them or makes them feel like bad people.
mhm,
So that was really, that was the biggest thing for me,
hmm.
you know?
Another random question. If you could define your book in one word, what would that one word be?
Ooh, hit me with questions I don't have. One word. Oh, geez, probably,
I'm gonna give you 10 seconds.
definitely,
10.
definitely not like not inspiring, not uplifting, not those things. I can tell you what it's not. Probably just perseverance, maybe.
Perseverance. I
Like,
love that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think that could be it in
Mm.
the end. By the end,
In the end, because we do have struggles.
yes, we do.
What's the difference between a writer and an author in your perspective?
Oh, that's a tough question. Um, so I studied journalism in college. That was my minor. I was in sports broadcasting. I had or no, I was in television production. I had a sports broadcasting concentration, and journalism was my minor. I wrote in journalistic capacity. I think anyone who does words is a writer. Words in any way.
Mhm.
Um, writer writes anything, but I think an author is a storyteller. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
I,
it
I,
does.
I don't know. Like I said, as soon as you do words, you're a writer. Absolutely. Any kind of words in any capacity. But
Mhm.
when you're an author, I feel like author applies to people who write stories and books and things like that, or even people that do, those op-eds in like the New Yorker and stuff, and like
Mhm.
those are authors too. People who write that kind of stuff. A storyteller. That's just my opinion.
Mhm. I like that. I like the distinction because sometimes authors just don't know the difference. And I totally agree that a writer is just someone who puts words on a paper. On author, they set out to tell you a tale. They set out to change you in some type of way, to give you a story, to give you something to believe in, to change your opinion on something. They want to show you a different side of humanity, whether that be bad or good, or not even anything.
Well, that's good. I like that. They set out to tell you a story. That's good. I like that.
And just on a side note, that's completely unrelated. I kind of got addicted to that little author power, like the author is God moment. And I did totally write that in my story um, about a character, knowing he's a character. So he uses that as justifications to do bad things to other characters. So he'd be like, the
Oh,
author,
that's so meta.
he'd be like, the
That's
author
like
wrote me
oh my
this
god, have you
way. I can just do that.
ever seen the Truman Show, that old movie with Jim Carrey where he realizes he's in a TV show and he's not like actually living his life. Someone is writing his life because
Mhm,
he's in a TV show. Oh my god, that's totally the same. I love that. It's so
mhm.
meta.
And what I like really, not to make this about me, but um, what I really like about writing that is like it took me down the rabbit hole of author is God books, and it's
Uh,
really so fascinating seeing how we authors are very much perfectionists within our works. It may not come out in a sense where we know it, but I feel like all authors treat their works as if it's their own creation and they obsess over it. And it's kind of funny that the craziest authors to me are always the best authors. So that was the point that I was getting to. You might be a little crazy.
I might be. I do get very attached. I do. I get
Yes.
very attached to my characters. I will absolutely admit that. I feel like they're my. I always call them my children, my kids, my
Me
babies.
too.
And all my
Oh my
authors,
god.
like my kids. Like my kids are suffering, like whatever.
Yeah. I do the exact same thing. And me and
Yeah.
my friend, we both want to be psychiatrists. So she's over there psychoanalyzing me, like, that's very concerning for you to, an inanimate object that really has no bearing on your life, you to identify that as your child. And I'm just like, but it
It has
is.
bearing on my life.
You don't understand. Write a book and you will understand.
Then you'll understand.
um, what was the like most fun, best, whatever, however you want to describe it, part to write of your book?
Most fun, best, fun, best. There are not too many things fun about this book.
I know.
Oh, I'm just kidding. Um, I think for me, it was developing the setting of the story. Actually, it's it's the first and only story I've written that actually takes place like where I live. So most of the time, like I'm just making up locations, or like I have a story set in a specific location for one reason or another. But
Mhm,
for whatever reason, like I wanted a beach town, and I was like, screw it, like this is where I live. Like I might as well just. I had just moved here like a year before I started writing this,
mhm,
and it was really cool to actually like drive around and be like, okay, I'm gonna include this, or like drive past the house, and I'm like, oh, that's Kai's house, like definitely, or like that's Sage's house, or like go downtown and figure out like where they're going on their date. And now like every time I go to Market Street Pavilion downtown, like I went there for my birthday last year, and I'm like, this is
mhm,
where Kai takes AJ on their date, like because it's true. You can see the sunset from the rooftop of that hotel, and in Charleston, the tallest things are church steeples and hospitals. But this
mhm,
hotel, for whatever reason, wherever like where it is location wise,
mhm,
it feels tall. And you look out like over the river and you get the sunset, and there's no buildings obstructing you, you know?
mhm,
And that's, I mean, that's part of the reason why I really love where I live. It's a city, but it doesn't feel like a city. I'm very much more like a beach country person.
mhm,
But there's something, you know, I can like walk in the middle of the street in downtown Charleston and not get honked at like in New York. Like I'm from the suburban Manhattan area. I've been to New York 1,000 times, you know, but that's not for me, you know. But here it's a city, but it doesn't feel like a city. And so for people to just like resonate with the location and not be part of one of the strengths of the story is just the setting and
mhm,
the locational vibe, I guess, for lack of a better word. I also got married here, you know, so like there's a lot of like very personal attachment to it, and
mhm,
well, that to me was fun. It was. I'm like, I live here, and it was really nice for me to put it in words.
mhm. So, what was the most exhausting part to write?
Everything.
I know, I know that's right.
Literally everything. Um, toughest though. So the should I like put like spoiler alert or like whatever if you haven't read this?
You
The
that would have been a
the
good thing.
overdose. Yes. So spoiler alert. Okay. The end. The overdose at the end. So for me, uh, I have written overdose scenes before, but it's been from someone observing an overdose. But to
Mhm,
have to write an overdose from the perspective of the person going through the overdose
mhm,
and trying to make it apparent to readers that this is what's happening without him ever saying, I'm ODing, because when you're ODing, you don't say you're ODing. Like, this is not how it works.
mhm,
So to be able to, and then to be able to make it emotional, like you're upset that this is happening. Like as a reader, you are like, absolutely not. This is not happening right now. No.
mhm,
Um, to I was very much a perfectionist about that, and it was a
mhm,
harder scene for me to write just because of the angle that I had to go about doing it.
mhm.
Make it emotional, make it apparent that this is what's happening without saying it, and it hurts. um, I wanted to kick you in the gut, you know.
Uh-huh.
So that was hard. You know, it was, and a little sad. There was that goes back to like there was a song I was listening to
Mhm.
over and over and over again with that song, "Appointments" by Julian Baker. Phenomenal song. Everything Julian Baker does is phenomenal, but definitely that song.
Mhm.
I listened to it on repeat doing that.
So what I'm getting is like that scene, not the chapter, that scene was particularly hard because of the different balances you had to do. You had to balance the skills
Mhm.
just right, so you weren't leaning too much into one thing, and that's what basically what I'm hearing. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It was again, it was the angle I had to take to write. It wasn't even necessarily the subject because, like I said, I've this is so messed up when I say it now out loud. I've written overdose scenes before,
Hmm.
but not from this perspective. So I had to approach it totally differently.
Hmm. So why does being an author matter to you? And if I were to take that title away, what would you lose from yourself?
Um, I mean, I feel like to me, like being an author matters because I want to tell stories that matter.
Mhm.
So you take that away from me, and I, you know, I feel like I don't have a sense of fulfillment. Like,
Mhm.
you know, like I have a day job. It's fine. It's boring, and I don't feel like I put any skills I have to use.
Ah,
um, and it's not fulfilling. Like I don't feel good. That sounds messed up when I say I don't feel good about doing my job, but
uh,
you know what I'm getting at. Like it doesn't. I don't feel like I have good purpose.
mhm.
And that's what writing the kinds of stories that I write and telling the stories I tell do for me. I want it. I
Mhm.
want you to read it and be like, this matters. This is important.
Mhm.
It's very fulfilling to me.
So what is that like person, thing, place, maybe? What is that thing that just convinced you to be an author?
Mm, I don't know. I feel like I like look back onto like my teenage years, like things I don't want to look back on. And I was writing. Like I've always been writing, and it took me a while to realize that. Like I've always been writing. I was just 15 and writing like Yu-Gi-Oh fan fiction, like but I was still writing. And it's always been like either coping or escapism. Like when I started really
Mhm.
writing fiction again, which was, when I joined Wattpad, which was like 4 years ago, um, it was a way for me to deal with what was going on in my life. Like, and it still is just from a different way. Like it's more so just, hey, these are my experiences now, and I'm gonna give them words.
Mhm.
And also just I keep like going back to this about how like I feel like because I do have a certain skill and a certain craft for this, that I can put, essentially like give a voice to the people in my life that, have experiences that feel the stigmas, the stereotypes, like, and just sort of
Mhm.
help, help that, you know. And I think that's why it's so important to me. And, and important for me to feel like their stories are told the right way. Um, and then even just what I've experienced, it's a different perspective, and I've written that story already. But I think so. I think it's just a combination of that. It's always just about
Mhm.
sort of dealing. I feel like is a negative word. Dealing with my life. It's not all that negative, but just putting it into words, essentially.
Mhm. I definitely can relate because writing for
Yeah.
me, definitely in the earliest parts, where it was just a coping mechanism, a way I can
Hmm.
literally escape, literally create what I want, have the life that I want. And I will often write about people that people that don't even know me, like celebrities, and
Hmm.
seeing myself with a life of doing what they do or being famous. And it was just in the early days of my writing, it was
Hmm.
all like, I guess I'm not a therapist yet, but I don't want to prescribe myself with anything. But I guess, like you said, it's just like it's a powerful coping mechanism.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So if you had like, do you plan on like picking this back up, like this universe, not necessarily a sequel, but like in this universe?
It's actually one of the only stories I've written that I feel like is a standalone.
Mhm.
Going back to like getting attached to characters, like usually even with like Crash Into Me, there was a point in time where I was like, this needs a sequel. I can't let go of this.
Mhm.
And I mean, it never obviously happened, but I'm very content with the way that the story ended, and just closing that book. I mean, not
Mhm.
to be punny, but like,
Yeah,
and it's the only story I've written where I've never had this urge to like
love that.
revisit or explore other aspects of it. It's the only story that I've not felt that. I think they're good as they are.
You know what? I have to say, I give you my respect for that because what I often see with some works that I want to feature on the podcast is that they keep coming back and they keep dipping more and more into the universe, and it's just taking away. Like the first story was amazing, it was brilliant. The second story was, yeah, it was good, but then as we get to
Hmm.
the third and fourth story, it's just like their story is over. It's nothing more to
Hmm.
add. And I love that you figured out, like, not to say that I wouldn't love to see a sequel, Don't attack me, readers, because I definitely would. But I feel like as authors, we do get attached, and like we said, those are our children. So it's
I
like,
know.
when can we let them go out into the big scary world?
I like to think they're like, I like to think they're doing their thing,
Mhm.
down the street from me. Just kind of
Just a
living,
drive away, not too
doing
far.
their thing. I know where he lives. I might even check on him though.
Mhm.
Oh my god, yeah. No, so but no, I do feel that though. Like I keep going back to the young adult novel that I finished, Blind Ambition, finished very recently. That has
Mhm.
my largest cast of characters, and so it was really, and like I'm having this itch like now where I'm like, I want to explore this person's story. So you sort of divert from the who the main protagonist was of the first book, but you're like, okay, this was the friend or this was the ex-girlfriend. I'm like, I want her story now.
Mhm.
I want to see her living and thriving and doing her thing. Like, so I get that because I feel that right now with that story.
Mhm.
But trying to contain myself.
Mhm. Well, I haven't read that book. I will. I definitely will. I will give
Well,
you
thanks.
my
You don't have to.
opinions. I d-
He's a little different, but same certain themes are similar. There is like substance abuse in it, but it's not like relative fiction at all. It's more of like a side, not a side thing. It's like a, how did I describe it? It's like a puzzle. It's like a piece of a larger picture.
Mhm.
I think that's the best way to put it. But yeah,
Mhm.
more male POV.
Oh, okay. You sold me there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, can you give me some insight into your three main characters and how would they go about solving their problems? And like just to set this up for you, it's like, let's see, me. I'll use me as an example. Um,
Okay.
Me as a character, but me as real life. That's the character in my book, if that makes sense. He goes about his problems just letting them grow out of hand until it's you have no choice. You have to face it. And if he could, he would run away. But it's certain things like that he loves, like family, that he's just going to have to stick it out for, and he knows that. So that's the only time he really doesn't run away from the problem. But if it's a problem, he's going to pull out. And I would say the way that he goes about solving these problems is that once it comes to surface, it's getting solved. He's going to make sure it's nipped in the butt so that when it's done, it's done. So
Mm-hmm.
your turn.
Let's see. Um, so I feel like with Kai, like he definitely like has self-esteem, self-worth issues,
Mm,
and he's been made to believe that he's not good enough, not like worthy of help, and
mm,
obviously in the beginning, like he just tries to either completely ignore his problems or pretend they don't exist by getting high and doing drugs,
mhm,
I feel like that's a lot of addicts trying to just ignore their problems by getting high. But as the story goes on, I think he realizes like, hey, I can have a life, and maybe I do
mm,
need to address things that are going on with me and all these problems instead of ignoring them or pretending they don't exist. That he like sort of eventually sees and understands like I have an opportunity to actually like live my life.
mhm,
Um, AJ's harder because I feel like she was in a good place when the story started. And I mean, and that was important to me in the sense that like stories that like focus on addiction, there's no like the recovery afterwards, and
mhm,
AJ's definitely recovered, and I feel like that was important to show like there's positivity and like good in being clean and sober, or like doing that and going through that process. And so her mindset is just when it starts is just starting over,
mhm,
and she's been through enough and she just wants to start fresh. But Kai sort of throws her for a loop, and she sort of makes it her responsibility to help him. So it's almost sort of like she sees his problems as hers.
mhm,
Um, and she does genuinely want to help him. Like I do, I've always felt that, that's a big thing. Like in the recovery community, like, okay, you got help, now go help someone else.
mhm,
I've seen that a lot. You're going through a successful recovery process, help someone else get there too. And the change just sort of goes on from there. So I feel like it's not even about her problems. It's she thinks because she tries to make Kai's problems her problems. which is an issue in and of itself. Like
Mm.
you want him to do it for him, but she's trying.
Yeah, yeah, that's all you can really ask of people is for them to try.
hmm She's good. She means well.
Three main characters.
Oh man, you know what? Those are my two main characters. I feel like I
I'm
love
still waiting on
Hunter and I
Sage.
love Stella.
We need some
You
Sage
want
love in
okay,
the chat,
okay, all
okay?
right, okay, all right. I'll give you Sage. So Sage, and so not that Sage is based on any person I know, but it's more so just her presence and her character and her life situation
Mhm,
is based on things that I've observed. That she obviously her family has a lot of money. She's an only child. She's spoiled.
mhm,
She's a brat essentially, and her addiction gets out of hand just because there's no control in her life. You
mhm,
know, so she just thinks I'm fine. Nothing bad's gonna happen to me. She's like one of those people. Like, oh, nothing bad's gonna happen to me. I'm invincible. I'm pretty. I have money. X, Y, Z, whatever. So she thinks she's invincible, and I think that's her problem. And she has control issues. Obviously, you can see with Kai. Like she very much tries to control him and what he does, and
mhm,
she feels like. I mean, the one thing I will say, and some people catch on to this, and some people have a hard time seeing past her toxic behavior is she really does love him, but
mhm,
she is just going through so much of her own shit and like doing so many bad things for herself that it just comes out negatively and touches everybody in her life,
mhm,
and then so Kai's unfortunately a victim of that. Like I would definitely call him a victim in that relationship. It was a toxic, emotionally abusive relationship, and
mhm,
like, and there are some people that after that breakdown scene that you mentioned that think that she has the ability to get help.
mhm,
And that's kind of I wanted to give her that closure where you feel like, okay, this is hurting her. Like she's struggling and she's hurt too.
mhm.
Again, definitely doesn't excuse any of her behavior, but it's more so just like you said, it does give her just the tiniest touch of human because
Mhm.
it's to me that was just realistic. That's all it was. I wasn't trying to like justify anything she was doing or like try and make
Mhm.
you see her from a different perspective. It's more so just that I felt like it was the most realistic thing, you know.
Mhm.
And you can decide if she gets help or not. That's not on me. That's on you as a reader. If you
Mhm.
want, if however you want to look at her life and her future. And if
I,
you're like, a more positive thinking person, sure, maybe she does get help.
mhm. I have two views on that. Like
Okay.
when I finished the book initially, I didn't reflect on what I was reading, but then I decided I would have you on the podcast, so I reflected on what I was reading. So the first time I'm just like, she's gonna die. I don't know by what, I don't know by who, but someone's gonna kill her. And then after I reflected on how I feel about the novel truly, I decided that in a life she will get help. She will figure out that her behavior is just self-serving and those things don't truly make her happy. Kai did. He's the one that got away and she eventually steals herself and find her a new Kai that she loves nevertheless, but she's never going to forget about Kai. Right? That's the
Oh,
point
he's the
where
one
I'm at.
that I really like that. He's the one that got away from her. I've never looked at it like that. I like that. Well, she died. I really truly believe like she loves him, in her own weird way.
Hmm.
Like, again, definitely did not, everything she did to him was wrong, but she did love him. Whatever.
She did have that.
hmm
So, could you tell me about your unfinished projects, maybe one or two, and if you ever plan on finishing
The 45 that I have,
them?
it drives my friend nuts. I have 45 Wattpad drafts of like stuff I've either like unpublished or whatever, and I just don't delete any. So there's 45 drafts, like Wattpad
Whoa.
drafts of yeah, no, out of control.
Yeah, out of
Really should clean that
control.
up.
45 with
Yeah.
already the books that you have published. So,
Yes. No, it's 8 published and 45 drafts.
oh, okay.
So what is that? I'm bad at math. Point is, it's more than 50 total. But anyway, most of them are completely just not a thing.
Mhm,
Um, okay, let's see. I really want to re revisit. There's a story I had called Ankle Breaker, which I started when I was almost done with Relative Fiction.
Mm,
And it was, again, it was like when I had this realization of like, hey, I really like male POV, and hey, I like, I want to incorporate the whole mental health themes that I was doing. And it was
mm,
about a star basketball player that um, experienced a young star basketball player that experienced a panic attack in the middle of a game and
mm,
didn't know or understand that that's what was happening to him. And he was definitely like I went into this knowing that he was not going to be likable at first. Like he was just everything you expect like a young basketball superstar to be. He was arrogant, he was
mm,
cynical, and he just thought like, he was the shit, right? And he was doing a lot of the wrong things. And then this happens, and he like doesn't know how to handle it, and he goes to live with like he's sort of like quote unquote takes a break like in the off season and goes to live with his mother who he hasn't had a relationship with in a long time. And I really love the vibe of the story. It was like Arizona desert horse ranch, like
mm,
beautiful. I'm like, I love it. And it was really like the thing I immediately picked up after sort of riding the momentum that I had with Blind Ambition, well, not with Blind Ambition, with Relative Fiction. I would like to revisit that one day, I think. Just
mm.
the themes always resonated with me, and I liked him as a narrator. His name was Indiana, and I always had Luka Doncic in my mind. But I love Luka Doncic, and I was like, this is my Indiana,
Mm.
big dumb basketball player.
I'll await the day. No pressure.
Maybe, no, yeah, probably not soon, but maybe.
Again, I read. I like I said, I click on to read authors. You have one good book, I read them all. I don't know
Oh,
why, but I just feel like if you gave me something good before, surely the next
mm,
one would be good.
yeah, right. I hope
Literally,
so.
literally, the authors that I had on 2 years ago on this podcast still reading their books. so,
Oh, that's
so,
good.
so don't so don't underestimate the power of a reader. So speaking of reader, what is your ideal reader? Who is this book written for?
Hmm. My ideal reader. Probably just really anyone who is goes into the story with an open mind and is not judgmental. You know, we've mentioned it. Like my characters tend to be very flawed.
Mhm,
They sometimes want to shake them, and they make mistakes, and sometimes readers just aren't always receptive to flawed characters. I don't know why, because I feel like that reflects real life. But
mhm,
I feel like that's all I can ask is people going into it with an open mind, and if you learn something, your perspective changes. That's great.
mhm,
Or on the other side, it's somebody who has experienced that and wants to feel seen. That's another big thing for me is I if you have gone through something similar, I want you to feel like your story is being told somehow, and you are seen.
mhm. I I don't know if I'm the ideal reader for this book. I just
You were judgmental, admit it.
uh, uh, I, don't put me on spot like that. No, I wouldn't say I was judgmental because I'm a very open person. I
Mhm.
think I'm too open sometimes. I'm literally too forgiving. Sometimes I'll just let you run over me. But
Aw,
anyway,
I feel that.
um, I just feel like sometimes it's a time and a place for a book. And
Mhm.
I don't feel like when I read this book, I truly appreciated it because when you said this book was named Closer, I realized that I've read this before. And
Really,
yes.
the
And
first.
and it's like I don't know if it was the name change or what has changed with that first reading of the book to now where I'm just literally in love with this book. Um, I will say the only bummer about Wattpad books is I can't have physical versions of them. Like I would literally decorate my
Um,
room with these books that I love so much. But it's like I don't know what
mhm.
was the difference. I don't know if it was the time, if it's the fact that I'm more accepting of who I am and what I actually like, and I'm not just reading
Mhm.
what is expected of me. Um,
Mhm.
but the first time I read your book, it was just another book I read. And now
Right.
that I've sat down, reflected, and have you on this podcast, it's just like My love for this book is phenomenal. It's everlasting.
Oh, everlasting. Oh, I'm gonna carry that with me forever now. It's everlasting.
Everlasting. You're going to be going through like a writer's block moment, and you're just gonna be like, "Oh, he said my book's everlasting."
My book was everlasting.
um, let me see. Another question come to my head. Oh, how did you come up with the title for your book?
The first one and second one.
Both
Okay,
ones.
both. All right, so closer. This is actually funny. So I don't always do this on purpose, but I feel like it just kind of happens that I tend to name my stories after songs.
Mhm,
It goes back to that whole playlist music thing, whatever. Closer was a song by Jack Baker. There were lyrics in it that not
mhm,
Jack River, Julian Baker sings Relative Fiction.
mhm,
So when Julian came out with her new album last year, and I was going through edits, and there was a song on her new album called Relative Fiction, and there's a line in it that goes, "It's all relative fiction anyway,"
mhm.
which, if you know the ending of the story,
Yeah.
completely ties into the story. So I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. And Julia Baker's always, I mean, because she's somebody who's actually clean and sober, and she's gone through drug addiction and everything. So
Mhm,
a lot of her songs really apply to Kai and his story. So I've always been very attached to her in terms of music for that, for the story. And so for her to have this song come out, that I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect.
mhm.
And it's all relative fiction anyway. Anything she does is great though, and I highly recommend her. It's emotional music, but she's incredibly talented.
Mhm. So, how do you balance your personal life with your writing life?
It's really easy. I don't have a personal life.
Uh,
Um,
I was not expecting that.
I'm sort of joking. You know what? I'm really lucky that my husband's very understanding of my hobby slash maybe my career one day. That if I'm just like I need to go upstairs and do some work, like he gets it. But I've worked from home for a very long time. Like even pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, I've worked from home for
Mhm,
probably almost 5 years at this point. So and I don't always need to have my full attention on my job, thankfully. And like I sit at my desk, I have 3 monitors for my like 9 to 5 job, and I'll put my laptop in front of me. And if I'm so I feel like I'm very much given this luxury of if I have an idea or I want to write something down, I can do it immediately.
mhm,
And so that helps too because even when I just log off work sometime, I'll also just close my personal laptop and be like, okay, I'm done with this for the day. And you know, and I think like just sharing it with people in my life and then like knowing what I do, and if I'm like, hey, I need to edit this, or I'm in a space where I need to work on something, I'm not like pressured to like go be social or anything. You know what I mean?
uh-huh,
But I mentioned this like I recently I moved about 4 years ago, right? Um,
mhm,
and so most of my friends still live back where I'm from. So you know, I talk to my friends daily, but it's like you know I don't go out all that much. So it's mostly just a lot of FaceTime.
mhm. Yeah,
So
I get that. Since COVID,
yeah,
FaceTime for me.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
Mm. I wonder, would you and Kai get along actually?
Only because I feel like I understand him. I feel like I know people like him.
Mhm,
Um, and like I said, not that I don't typically model characters after people I know, but it's more so that I give them situations that I'm familiar with or experiences I'm familiar with. Um,
mhm.
but I probably would. I think he's a nice guy, you know, and that's all I can ever ask of people. Just be a nice person. So
For me, I don't know if me and Kai would get along because I would be too focused on. I feel like me and Kai would be friends, but me and Kai's best friends will be best friends. I feel like that's where the energy is. Cause I don't
oh,
know,
everybody loves Hunter. Hunter's a fan favorite for sure. He's a cool
I
guy.
don't know why that's the energy, or maybe me even Kai's sister, like literally, like
Oh yeah.
literally.
Stella is you know what, it's so funny, like I feel like all of my any like sibling characters I create, because the same thing was like with for Crashing to Me, and like
Mhm,
I don't have a sister, so I feel like I go out of my way to create sister characters like that. That's how I would want my sister to be if I had a sister,
mhm.
you know? I give Stella like
I have
this
too
just this
many sisters.
wild energy.
I have too many.
I have one brother, and so I've always wanted a sister. So I feel like I always like emulate what I want, like when I create sister characters for my character.
Uh-huh. But I
Yes,
totally
Stella,
get it.
I would vibe with Stella hardcore.
I don't do the sister brother thing because I just have a lot of siblings, but I definitely do the cousin thing. Like, I don't know what it is about a good cousin character, but.
Oh yeah, I get that.
Mhm. So, why did you select the names for your characters? Was this like just a random thing? Do they have meaning? What's the what?
Um, so for a while, I think I mentioned this before. I had this thing going where all my protagonists were named after cities or places. Like I have a Brooklyn, I have a Dallas, I have a
Mhm.
Savannah. I had an Indiana. That was his name. That was his name. In Ankle Breaker, and like Kai was the one that actually broke that little trend I had going.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know why. Like Kai is just my favorite name. Like to the point where I'm like, if I have a son, like I'm gonna try and persuade my husband to name him Kai. um, and but I also really like unisex names. So like even though AJ's real name Antonetta is not unisex, I like the unisex vibe of AJ.
Mhm.
I mean, same with Hunter. Like my brother had a girlfriend named Hunter. I gave Hunter, you know, I like unisex names a lot. Um, and I don't know why I was just like, okay, he's not going to be named after a city or a place this time. We're just not doing it.
Mhm.
So
What is the most like surprising things you've learned while creating a book? Not necessarily like writing, because of course you're going to learn writing, but like maybe you learn how to use a bow and arrow through writing. I don't know.
let's see. I think you know it's funny actually, and I feel like we mentioned this before. I've realized how easy it is to get attached to your characters, um, which is maybe not the answer you were looking for, but I feel like we talked about this. Like I feel like a lot of writers experience this. You're just so in deep creating your characters and those
Mhm.
bonds and everything that it's really easy to just get attached to them, and that surprised me because I just not that I didn't think it was going to happen, but I just didn't expect it. Like I feel like okay, I can write this and move on, but that's not usually the case.
Mhm.
So that's what surprised me. I think.
Mhm. Um, I there is no wrong answer. Don't set me up for that.
You know the answer you're looking for. I don't know how to use a bow and arrow, actually, so nor have I
I'm
ever needed
still
to.
looking for Katniss Everdeen in real life. Where she
Mm,
be at? Um, I nothing can come to mind for me right now, but I know it's going to be
mhm.
something one day that I'm just
Yeah,
going to be like, I learned that because I'm an author.
your random Google searches. Have you ever seen those memes of like
Mm,
this is what the recent Google searches of
that's
writers look like?
me.
It's like how to bury a body and like stuff
Yes,
like
that's
that.
literally me. I literally looked up like how to dissolve a body in acid because
Yes,
he's an anti-hero. He does weird things, okay? And I
we
know the
love
FBI
anti-hero.
agent on my computer is just like, what is going on?
What is wrong?
He's crazy.
What are you doing?
We're gonna get you. Body missing, you main suspect.
That's you. You're a suspect.
so, so do you like base your characters off some people in your life, or are they just made up?
Um, Most characters aren't based on like people I know
Hmm.
because it really just a I don't know. I personally am like it's kind of awkward,
Yeah,
um,
it is.
but
Like I
also just
just
like
killed you in my book.
I I genuinely right exactly. I genuinely like creating characters. You know, I
Hmm.
like giving them their own personalities and interests and goals and motives and whatever. So I genuinely enjoy that process, and so that's probably why my characters tend to just be creations of my own. But what I do is I'll give them, you know, like I think I mentioned before, like my real life experiences or experiences of someone close to me. So I like sort of create new people, but put them in situations that I've been in or that people I know have been in.
Mm-hmm.
It's so it's not quite like based on people I know, but it's based on life that I know,
Yeah.
experiences that I know. But however, so I have not that she's based on me, but my current project that I'm working on right now, Overdrive, is the first female POV that I've done in a while. And
Mhm,
but she, Savannah, that's Miss Savannah, is definitely the closest character to me that I've ever written.
mhm,
Um, she's a lot like me, even just like her personal style, like her music taste, like all of
mhm,
that is very me, and I've never done that before. Um,
mhm,
but probably the closest thing to somebody I know, it's me.
mhm. Yeah, so what I'm getting is that you don't necessarily base characters. You make the characters, but the situations are kind of similar or have like some underlying truth to them that you've experienced.
Yep, that's definitely it.
Me, I think I'm kind of the opposite actually. For me, like characters, I don't base like a character off of a person, but I do base it off of things that I have seen in people. Like, oh, you're a
Mhm.
narcissist. Let me write that into a character. This is how narcissists operate. Um, um, I never tell people that, but I do kind of do kind of do that. But like the settings and the actual life events, I tend to write a lot of fiction, not
Yeah.
fiction, but fantasy. Uh,
Mhm.
so it's like I don't think anyone, hopefully, a character within a book, and they know that they're a character. Like I wouldn't want people to be going through that. That's kind of stressful.
That's kind of stressful.
That's kind of stressful.
Truman Show.
Yeah. But just imagine that. Just imagine you're the only person in the world that knows that this is just a book. Like, oh,
And you hear the over voice, the narrator narrating your life.
and I'm just like, especially if they say something about me, I'm just gonna be like, oh, no, no, no. So how long does it take you to write a book in general?
Definitely depends. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I finished Realtive Ficition in probably like 8 to 9 months, I'd say.
Hmm.
But that is a very short novel. Whereas like, Blind Ambition that I've talked about took me over a year to finish that. But it's also literally twice as long. Like Relative Fiction is what did I say, 50, about like 55K words.
Hmm.
Blind Ambition is literally 110,000 words.
Ooh.
So legitimately
Yeah.
twice as long. Like I'm not great at math, but I know that's twice as long. Um, so it
You
really
know
just
that's
depends on the
half as
story.
much.
Yes, exactly. I know basic stuff. So yeah, it really just depends.
Mhm. I reframed the comment because I'm embarrassed. It takes me so long.
No, no, there's nothing wrong with that. I always tell people, I'm like, you gotta like live your life, and even though like this is great for you and it's a hobby, and or
Mhm,
like even if it's your like what you're doing with your life, like there's no there's no time limit on it. You
mhm,
gotta do it on your own time. Never ever rush things ever. It's like
mhm.
the worst thing you can do for your work.
Thank you so much. I like that. Good advice. If you could meet your three main characters, just gonna put that
Really
in there.
including Sage in this. Oh my god.
Mhm. What would you say to each of them? You only get one word. I'm not a one word, one sentence.
Okay, for Kai, I'd say just keep going.
Hmm.
You know, AJ probably. Uh, this is so cliche, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Follow your heart.
Hmm.
Okay, Sage. Man, I don't know. I feel like I have such a complicated relationship with Sage. Like I know she's bad. I
Hmm.
know she's done a lot of bad things, but it's like evaluate yourself and your life.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm, I definitely do.
Yeah.
I would be like, I would be like, Kai, don't lose this good thing that you have. Cherish the
Oh yeah.
relationships you're in. I would be like, AJ,
That's
stop
really
being
good advice.
crazy.
I like
We're writers. You're misrepresenting us.
that.
And I would be like, Sage, honestly, g- find yourself because this is not you. And I want to root for
Find
you, but you're
yourself.
making it hard.
Find yourself. That's good.
But no, like that scene where AJ was just like literally writing about Kai, and I was just like, I'm an author. You
Did
can't
you
do
see
that.
that coming? I'm curious. Did you really? Because it's like I feel like people were torn with that. Some people totally knew that was happening, and some people had absolutely no idea. Be
Okay,
honest.
I knew age. So I was literally writing because I write about everything. So I write about this. I was writing about this in my journal, and I'm like, something is so weird about AJ. She is not
Hmm.
as good as she seems. But I thought she was lying
Hmm.
about her past. I didn't know that we was doing some author weird stuff here. I was
Yep.
like, I was totally prepared. I totally steeled myself for her not to be who she says she was, but not for her to be who she says she was, just to be writing about. God, I was just like, hmm. So that definitely,
And
I knew something was coming, but I didn't expect that.
you know what?
Mhm.
All right. All right. I like that.
So, what are you currently reading, whether that be a physical book or a Wattpad book?
There's a couple things I'm reading on Wattpad right now, actually, in terms of like things that are being updated or
Mhm.
things that are complete that I'm like trying to get through. I don't want to like leave anybody out, so I'm just gonna like there's a reading list I have of all my stuff that's either like I'm going to read or I'm in process of reading. So that's my
Mhm.
second reading list. I just like I'm reading a bunch, so I don't want to leave anybody out.
Yeah, I understand.
Physical books. Um, I just, God, what is it? I just started reading The Other Side of Perfect. I picked it up at Barnes& and Noble the other day.
Mhm.
I forget the author. I feel bad, but the cover's really cute. It's about a ballerina who gets hurt. I love that kind of stuff. Not that she got hurt, but like I just like people overcoming things and honoring their bodies and all kinds of stuff like that. So
Mhm.
I like that. And then I'm always reading and rereading. It's my all-time favorite book. It's called House of Leaves. It's by Mark Z. Danielewski. I think I'm saying his last name right.
Mhm.
Literally unlike anything you will ever read in your life. Like it's just, it's
Just so
like
you
this
know, I'm taking
big
notes.
thick. Oh, I recommend it to everyone. It's very weird. It's very weird. It's a story within a story within a story. But the
Mhm.
way that you can figure it out is the formatting of the book is very important. This is not a book you can get on like Kindle or anything like that because you have to physically hold the book because there are pages with one word, there are pages with jumbles of words, there are
Mhm.
pages where words are in red. There's also three different fonts used so you can tell which part of the story you're reading,
Mhm.
which is nice. um,
Yeah. Mhm.
but but the core of it, I'm like secretly like a big, well, actually maybe not so secretly. I love horror.
Mhm.
Like all my favorite horror like movies are horror movies. Like I love horror fiction. I wish I could write it, but
Mhm.
maybe one day. But I love it as a genre, and the base story in it, like the deepest in story, is about his family. And he's a filmmaker, and his family moves into this house, and it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside.
Mhm.
And it's just they go through like these excursions of all these dark hallways in this house, and it's like so. Then the outside story is somebody making like I guess an academic analysis or some type of analysis on the film
Mhm.
itself. Is it real? Is it not real? This and that. And then the outest most story is a guy who finds this manuscript of this person who did this analysis on this story, but it like drove him crazy. Like
Mhm.
it's just it is the most bizarre, but also like every time I read it, I like I see something. So I I really like I highly recommend it to everybody. And if you have time in your life to read it, read it.
Mhm. That's what I'm literally putting on my Amazon list of books.
It's like 1,000 pages. But again, it's a little misleading because there are pages with one word on them.
Uh, I'm literally like literally putting these down, writing these down for later. Um, what hobbies do you have? Like, what is that weird thing as an author that you do? Maybe as a person that you do.
Let's see. Hobbies. Jeez. And writing is my hobby. But
Mhm.
I used to paint a lot. I really don't anymore.
Mhm.
I got really into that during COVID. Obviously, everybody. I feel like everybody found a new hobby in COVID.
Mhm.
Um, but let's see what else. I hmm, I don't know. I'm like a foodie. Does that count? Like I live in a
Mhm.
very foodie city, and my husband and I always love like trying new restaurants, and I'm very like I mean, I'm food motivated in general, but
Mhm,
it's, I find it very fun to like
mhm,
go out, try new restaurants. I mean, there's like hundreds here that are all very like top tier, high quality restaurants, and we kind of like doing that, you know.
mhm.
So
I
that's
will say,
fun.
like,
Yeah.
I'm not a foodie per se, but
Mhm.
I love like doing different types of baking and cooking.
Mhm.
And whenever my grandmother cooks, I am so I'm like, this is 10 minutes overcooked. You might want to change that.
Tell me you watch the Great British Baking Show because that's like my guilty pleasure show, and I love it.
My grandmother does, but I don't.
Oh my god, you love it. I love it. It's like such a fun thing to watch. It's a feel good show, you know. And
Mm,
I like love all the aesthetics of everything that they do. Oh, I think
mm,
you'd like it. You should watch it.
I'm literally putting that. You just make
Mhm.
me put a lot of things on my list now.
Oh,
Who is your most memorable reader, actually?
memorable reader. So the girl who actually ended up becoming one of my real life best friends,
Mhm,
the one I told you about who moved to London. Um, what did she read first? I don't even remember. And then we just like started talking, and we like became friends as I was doing relative fiction.
mhm.
Um, and we just clicked. Her handle on Wattpad is Wildflower, but the I is a one and the E is a three.
Mhm.
Um, and like we ended up actually getting so close that two of our books share universes. So
Oh.
my story, Blind Ambition, and her story, The Halo Effect, share characters. Like my characters appear in her story, her characters appear in my story. We've
Mhm,
written dozens of scenes together. And then my ongoing project, she has a story that she hasn't published yet that also fits into the universe of that one. Um,
mhm,
and like we talk every day. And we don't even talk about writing as much anymore just because we have all these other things in common that we talk about. But um, I guess just most memorable reader because she ended up being one of my best friends. So,
yeah, that definitely
uh,
counts.
which is messed up because I'm like, what did she read first? I think she read Gray Matter, which is
Mhm.
my novella that I hate
Oh.
first, but she liked it. So I was like,
Uh-huh.
you're very nice.
Mhm. Was it like something that she said that was just like, friends now? Or was it just like a process?
No, I think it was like a process. We started just like chit chatting on DMs, and then I started reading her stuff, really enjoying her stuff. So then we were just, we started talking about each other's work essentially, and then we started
Mhm,
sharing ideas, and then we started texting all the time, and then just and like I don't know, I bought a jacket she's been telling me to buy for like the past like I don't know 6 months. I finally bought it, sent her a picture of it. I was like, I bought the jacket. Like it's like just that now.
mhm.
Like it's a jacket that she has that she's like, you need to buy this jacket, and I finally bought it. Like that's our relationship now.
Was it worth it?
I kind of love it. I don't
Oh.
know. It's been very, very cold here in the South. I'm not used to it.
Mhm.
Like it's 35 degrees, like 35 degrees. I'm like, I don't have a coat. Like, what am I supposed to do? So yes, it was worth it actually, because now I'm sort
Mhm,
of almost warm.
mhm. I will say that me and my family, a lot of my family they live in Florida, and some
Mm.
of them live in Ohio. So when I literally go to
Ohio.
Florida, Ohio, and I'm just like, when I'm at Florida, I'm just like, this is where I belong. No winter. And then I get back and it's winter and it's snowing, and I'm just like, how dare you do this to me?
Oh no, literally. Like I haven't seen snow in like 4 years, and they were talking about how it was going to snow here, and I was like, absolutely not. Don't want to see it. This is why I moved.
Oh, we are our last two questions. I didn't even notice. Um, did you hide any secrets in your book that only a few people find?
Oh, okay. I'm excited about this one actually.
Mhm,
I don't know if you picked up on this or not, but I'll point out the one I did in relative fiction. So, um, I wrote myself into relative fiction. So,
yeah.
what I mean
Mhm,
by that, you noticed that, okay? Because I do kind of like point it out at the end. But so Kai and AJ go to a park downtown called Battery Park, and that's
mhm,
actually where I got engaged. And so they sort of observe like quote unquote me,
mhm,
and I get really hesitant about going up to the gazebo thing where my boyfriend was proposing. Like,
mhm,
because in that moment I knew it was happening and I like wasn't ready for it. And like I remember seeing the woman on the bench over there with the camera, and I was like, "Oh my god, no, I'm not ready for this." and they like watch that happen and laugh about it. um, so, and I'm like, yes, laugh about it because I mean, like he's my husband now. He's wearing a shirt with like a jellyfish print on it,
Mhm,
and I just like those pictures, and I just remember that, and I was like, this will be fun to do.
mhm,
The other one is in correction to me. Natalie is reading a book in one of the earlier chapters. It's called The Science of Selling Yourself Short, which is actually my self-published novel that I
mhm.
self-published in July of 2020. So she's reading
Ooh,
that. So like some people notice that they're like, oh, okay, that's cute. Like otherwise, I feel like I don't do Easter eggs. I
mhm.
don't know. I enjoy seeing it in like other people's stuff, but I'm like I don't know that I'm clever enough for that.
I do it a lot, literally. Like, I feel like that's one of the reasons why my book is taking so long, because it's literally whole conversations in the book. Like, it's select words and patterns that if you read it over and over again, you'll realize, like, huh, why is that right there? That doesn't seem like it's supposed to be. And then if you add them all together, you literally get another
Oh,
story.
that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's tiring because you're just like,
It's a lot to keep up with. I feel like.
it is, and then you like in your mind it makes perfect sense all the time,
Mhm,
but then you
mhm.
get people reading it and they're like, "Oh, I got that," and then other parts are just like, "I where's that again?" So it's a balance. And this is our last question of the day, which I'm kind of not ready to say, because like your mood, like you really are. Um, what projects can we expect from you in the future?
So right now, um, I am. I guess it's not really a new project because it was something I started writing
Mhm,
in August of 2020, I think.
mhm,
So Overdrive is my current project. I update it on Fridays because I actually do have a lot of. Thankfully, because I had already been writing it, I actually like. I'm trying to stick to like a Friday update schedule because I have like a stockpile of chapters. I'm
mhm,
really not good at that because I like have all these chapters. I'm like, I just want everybody to read everything out, but I'm trying to be better about that.
mhm,
So Friday updates technically. And again, it's sort of my foray back into female POV because I have a very serious attachment to Savannah because she's basically me. So I felt like
uh-huh,
that was a good way for me to try and find my groove again with that perspective.
mhm,
Um, and it's just so she's a professional surfer. She gets hurt.
mhm,
So again, it goes back to those like little tropes I like of like a professional athlete getting injured and sort of like overcoming physical and mental adversity and honoring
mhm,
your body, your skills. It's about perseverance. It's about self worth. Um, and she has a one night stand with a Formula One driver. So I'm a sports junkie in general, and I typically include sports in my stories. Relative Fiction is actually the only one that doesn't
mhm,
involve an athlete of some kind.
uh-huh,
That's what I studied in school, so that's what I know. But and they have this one night stand in Monaco. I've always wanted to go to Monaco.
mhm,
And both of them are at points in their careers where they feel like they can't hold a relationship. It's very much like a right person, wrong time thing, which I
uh-huh.
think is like such an underrated trope.
Me
Like
too. Me too.
there's like wrong, like there's like, wrong, what is it? Right time, wrong person, like whatever it is. Like I think right person, wrong time. I love that because there are not there are they clearly have like a chemistry and a connection, and
Mhm,
it's really the first like true romance I'm writing where like romance is the main plot. I mean, there's obviously a lot of other things going on, like I mentioned, but romance is like at the forefront, and that's not usually what I do. Usually, romance is very much a subplot for me,
mhm,
um, but their relationship is a major aspect of this work. I won't call it like the main thing because again, it's a little more than that. There's a lot of very empowering female friendships in it. Which again I wrote with my best friend. So she wrote that character,
mhm.
which is Savannah's best friend Gemma. It's basically her. We've like manifested their lives. Like it's kind of
Mhm.
crazy. But
Oop.
anyway, it's and I'm very it's the best thing I've ever written. And I know that. And there were a lot of really negative things that happened with it and involving it last year that sort of made me take it down for a while.
Mhm,
Um, And I feel like mentally, I've not even challenged myself because again, it's not negative at all in terms of me approaching it now. It's I've changed my mindset on a lot of things and about the way I operate as a writer.
Mm,
Um, and I'm at a place where I felt comfortable bringing it back. Um,
mm,
and I'm just really excited about it. And like everyone, like, and I'm happy that everyone loves it, and or like the people that are reading it love it. And it just, I don't know. You tell I'm like getting very like, I don't know. It's a
Emotional.
very important story. It's a very important story to me. I mean, like everything I write is important to me, but there's something about this,
Hmm.
the emotional connection I have to it, even though from a subject matter perspective, it's definitely not like my heaviest work. Like there's no substance abuse, which is like, I don't want to say my space, but it kind of is. It does tend to be where I float
Hmm.
typically. And doing straight romance, like straight up romance, where that's at the forefront of the story is unusual for me. It's a little bit out of my comfort zone, but they're like the best couple I've ever written. I consider like Kai and AJ a real couple. Like, yeah, you want to root for them. And like same with like Natalie and Brooklyn and Crush into Me. And like Dallas has various love interests in Point of Mission. Like Sav and Atlas are like meant to be. Like you feel it
Hmm.
right away. And yeah, I'm very attached to them and their relationship and their story, and I'm just very happy that I get to share it again, and I feel like I'm in a good place with it. So Friday updates,
Hmm.
take note. Fridays, I'm gonna
Fridays.
try.
Hmm. Fridays, my new best day. Um, I just want to thank you so much for coming onto this podcast. And just so you know,
Oh,
I was
thank you
very
for having
scared
me.
to
I'm so
meet you. Mm,
We're friends now.
uh,
All good.
Thank you. Um, and is there anything you want to say?
No, just thank you so much for having me. I love talking to people about my work, about their work, about writing in general. And this was like an awesome, like, first podcast for me to be on. So
Many more to
I,
come, I assure
I
you.
hope so. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Mhm. And just to end it off, I want to say thank you one more time. You've really been one of the good ones I've got. Um, yeah. So, audience, you can see her work. You can see it. It's probably going to be linked on the screen. If not, it's in the comment section and the description. Once again, thank you for listening to the end. Goodbye.